All right, we're recording now. This is the Kubernetes SIG architecture meeting for March 26th, 2020. Welcome, everybody. Please abide by our code of conduct and which amounts to being nice to each other. And let me share the agenda. Won't get going. Okay, I guess to start out, we'll start with the AI status from last time. Looks actually like we've got whips, as I recall, for each of these. I know Daniel sent something out with this, so I guess I'll just confirm with each person. I don't think Tim's here, but oh yeah, he is. So Tim, we're just still have this whip, right? We're just waiting to review it.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember what it was that I signed up for.
This is the same.
This is the immutable stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I have not done it yet. It is on my list. I have not written it yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you have I see. You got, well, that's fine. Okay.
We have a few different issues around defaults. We have around API changes that we need to make sure we go over. Jordan, you already covered the pluralization one. Did that get merged, Jordan?
No, I hadn't. I saw you left comments on it, but I hadn't gotten back to them yet.
Okay, yeah, so we've got that one. We've got the nil defaults, which I don't think we've actually come to conclusion on yet. And we've got the immutable field stuff, all three of which are on my list of things to write about.
Now that 118 is out, you have lots of time, right, Tim? Right?
Yeah, of course.
Regards to mine, I sent that out. I haven't seen anybody distribute the email, and I think that people are working on actually setting up the new working group. So that'll give us a place to discuss this sort of thing.
All right. I will on that. Okay. And then Jordan, you had a couple of things here, which is there any movement on those yet?
Not yet. Yeah, Tim left comments on one I need to revisit, and the other one hasn't started yet.
All right, thank you. All right then, sub-project readouts. Is that Jordan typing away for API review or somebody else?
That's me. Just-in-time readouts. There are 2 API graduations planned for 119. So that's certificate signing requests and ingress.
Woo-hoo.
And then there are 2 long-lived beta APIs that are working through their graduation criteria. So cron job and pod disruption budget. Those have been going on for a while, but the goal is to get movement on those so that we can finish those up and get them to V1. So feel free to jump into those if you have interest or would like to help. And those are the main things planned for 119 that I am aware of at this point. Okay. 119 designs haven't closed yet. So as those reach closure, more things might get added to this list.
Excuse me. So along API discussion, David's kept on avoiding permabetas. We want to merge that like quickly, and I think it's been out there for a long time, and it's basically ready to merge. So this is your last call for comments.
And sort of along with that, another process item is beta-free conformance runs. So we got the job in place last release that is running conformance jobs with only GA APIs and the certificates API. And so as part of moving certificates to V1, that will get locked down and we'll run GA only conformance this release.
Ooh, awesome. All right, progress. All right, James.
Hi. Before I start, I see a couple of new faces. So Raymond, welcome. Alina, welcome. So nice to see you all here. So, and it's good to see all the Google folks working from home. And Jace, hope you're feeling okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm over at Apple now, so that's exciting. So
Yeah, you were sniffling, so.
yeah, and when John coughed, I'm like, no, John, no.
No, I don't think it's coronavirus here.
Okay, good. I'm gonna go back to mute.
Okay, so I think I'll let Jordan speak to the first one. There was but Jordan, why don't you?
So CAdvisor has been a dependency magnet for a long time. It basically integrated with every storage thing in the world and every container runtime in the world and every cloud in the world. And it was exciting. And we found a way to isolate those so that the CAdvisor binary can continue building with all of those and support all of those without disrupting anyone who depends on it. But our use as a library, we have a way to trim down all the transitive things we pick up. So that landed last week, which is fantastic. And it gives us a really easy way to, as we continue to trim down things in Kubernetes, just move them into the binary only portion of the CAdvisor repo. So Dim's already updated Kubernetes to use that version of CAdvisor, and we dropped like InfluxDB dependencies and like all kinds of random things. So this is really good. This was one of the most entangled parts of our dependency tree.
Yeah, definitely. And I filed some follow-ups as well. There's a couple of PRs and one, I think, a couple more merged. I just listed the open PRs there. So one question I did have for this group here is, there is support for NVIDIA metrics in CAdvisor. Does anybody use it? Because I don't know if we need to pull that into the library, into our library or not.
It is not currently supported in the library, and you're wondering if it should be? Is that the question?
It is supported. It gets pulled into our KK repository. If I remember right. If
I don't know that
then
people on this call are going to know whether it's used or not.
Okay.
Do we have ways to like look for callers or find usage of it?
That's what I have to do. So if none of the big cloud providers use it, then I'm going to go look at other people. That's why I asked the question here. So
I would probably reach out to like the SIG cloud provider and like ask that list. They might.
Right, and we are also using somebody's private repository, Mindprints, his private repository for one of the dependency there. So that was the next thing that I was going to go look at is like, what are the personal repositories that we're using, and are there any alternatives available? There's a bunch of those that we use as well.
So those NVIDIA things are for GPU, so you might want to talk to SIG-Node too, right?
Right, exactly. So I'll do that. So while we were doing this changes, the other thing that was happening in parallel was the Dockerless kubelet. And the idea here was, can we segment the usage of Docker and things that we pull from other Moby repositories into something that we can drop, just like the providerless tag that we have currently. So there is a KEP and a PR. It's turned out really well, especially with the changes in CAdvisor. We can definitely, the scenario like kind, where a kind doesn't uses containerd and it does not need Docker. So we can definitely use it for that scenario. The second scenario that we have is a cluster API. Cluster API, we know that it doesn't use a Docker, it uses containerd at this point as default. So, so the idea would be to get to the point where we merge this, we get it working, we add CI jobs for CRI only scenarios, and then once we are comfortable, we can go to a deprecation mode for Docker shim. That will be in a subsequent KEP. this kept just focus on making sure that we can add a tag, we can do a build of Cubelet without Docker, and we are able to use it in some limited scenarios. So we are looking for SIG node folks to help with approval and review of the KEP and the PR. This is just FYI here for you all. The other thing that came out of this C advisor on Containerd was the recursion between some of the CRI runtimes and Cubelet and CRI API, basically. So if you take Containerd has two repositories, Containerd/Containerd and Containerd/CRI. So, and they have a recursive dependency on Kubernetes and CRI API. The same is true with the Windows folks as also. The HCS shim has a recursive dependency on things in our repository. So the best way to cut this dependency is to get not stage CRI API. Now, this might get entangled with the previous one where we were talking about can we get rid of Docker shim, because to get to the point where we deprecate Docker shim, we have to get CRI API to a V1 level. So then that goes into the other discussions about, okay, what is missing in CRI API? How do we rev CRI API to a point where we are comfortable naming it as a V1? So it goes into that loop as well. So if anybody is interested in this, let me know and we can talk about it as part of SIG node or on another KEP or something like that.
I mean, making the external repository the source of truth for CRI API, it doesn't seem like it needs to be at V1 in order to do that. I mean, people already consume it via that repository. So
yes, it's okay. Yeah. Every time I bring that up, people say, "Oh, it has to be V1 before we do that," and I'm like, it's the default now. So how do we even care whether it is V1 or not?
Of all the repositories we have, this is the simplest one to make the external repository the source of truth, because it's a leaf repository. So it doesn't have any other peer dependencies.
There is one more caveat here, Jordan, which is we have like a streaming thing, a package for streaming. And that has been a thorn on our side as well, because what happens is the runtimes just, it's not an API. It's just a package that we have that other people use. So we have to look at that.
I remember a fair amount of discussion about that. We can continue that discussion, but like getting the API types to where they can be referenced simply seems like something that should be pretty straightforward to do. I think we should go ahead and do that.
Okay, I will raise it with SIG node and we'll see where we get on that. The other one that came up while we were looking at the dependencies was WebSocket support for kubectl. So the reason I bring this up here is we are using the Speedy package from Docker, Speedy streaming package from Docker. And it seems we have an issue which is 5 years old now to drop Speedy. And the main consumer of that is kubectl. And the question is, are there alternatives that are available to switch over from Speedy? And talking to Mike Denise and looking through several PRs and issues raised in this area, what we have been trying to move towards was support for HTTP2 in the Golang packages. And that has stalled because of people who are working on that package have moved away. So that's kind of like at a dead end now. Yes.
On this, I think, yes, kubectl uses it, and it probably doesn't need to use it as much, but the path between API server and Cubelet uses Speedy, and that I don't think has a web socket replacement. So just removing it from Cubelet is not, or kube control is not going to get it out of the dependency tree.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so
also the Docker speedy dependency is not Docker, right? That's its own, from what I can see, very small component. So
yeah, it's its own repo, and I just looked at it because I came across it in another. There's this long-running bug that's occasionally things disconnect. I'm pretty sure that there's some binary sequence that you can transmit over a speedy channel that confuses the library and makes it disconnect. And I went looking at that dependency, and they don't have any randomized testing. So I suspect that that is true. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure yet, but
they would be very happy if we took over the library and run with it, because they haven't been working on it and they need to sunset it. So that is another option for sure.
Yeah, I mean the speedy to HTTP2 or WebSocket transition is a thing that I think we would like to do, but it doesn't block the Docker dependency cutting.
Correct, it doesn't. It came out when I was raising this question with like Justin Cormack, saying, okay, what are we using? What can we drop? He said, okay, this is one thing that has been bothering me for some time. Can you guys do something about it? So that's why I brought it up here. And the other aspect to this WebSocket thing was we already support WebSocket in API server for like the Python, for usage from Python. So we already support WebSockets.
Yeah, WebSockets were added to make it easier from browsers, I believe.
Exactly, right. So for console, that kind of scenarios. So we could switch over kubectl to WebSocket, but then like Daniel said, we can't cut the cord between the API server and Cubelet. Until we switch that, we'll still be using that library. So maybe it makes sense for us to take over that library, and like when Daniel, when you want to start fixing stuff there, maybe we can have it in Kubernetes SIGs and work on it.
Yeah, fork there would make it easy to fix bugs. I'm not sure if that's easier or harder than replacing it entirely. If we were to try and replace it, since we have to work with kubelets that are at least 2 versions old from API server, like we wouldn't be able to, like, assuming we get it in this release, it would still be like 2 more releases before we could actually drop the dependency.
Oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I have a bunch of those. Like OpenStack is stuck for 2 years now. So, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the problem is just nobody has volunteered to do this, and it's not a trivial amount of work. So, yeah.
Would we prefer to keep the speedy stream library where it is right now and try to work with the maintainers there who are no longer interested in it?
I guess if we came up with a fix and they were not around to merge it, there's nothing stopping us from forking it at that point. I don't know if I see a need to preemptively fork it, right? Like that's easy.
Okay, I'll let you make the call when the time comes, Daniel, and you can tell us if we need to go work the problem or not.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a strong opinion about should we do it preemptively or not.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair. Okay, that's all I had in terms of updates from the code organization stuff.
All right, great, thank you. Well, you're still up, Dims.
Oh, okay. So the background for the next topic is SIG PM sent a message to steering asking to figure out how they could wind down their activities. There is nobody active in the SIG, and the only chair who is active is Stephen Augustus, and he gets to do all the work and have all the power, but there's nobody to help him. So he's asking to see if we could wind down the SIG PM. The main activity that they have been working on, or at least they are supposed to be working on, is KEPs. So the thought here is, we talked about this in steering a little bit, and I'm bringing it to this group here because SIG architecture, can we do some a curation subproject for KEPs, which will take care of things like publishing the KEPs as a website, searchable, making sure that there is the data we have in the KEPs is up to date. We've been talking about the format of the KEPs and what is the data that goes into the KEPs, and making the KEPs progress, on a regular basis, and the metadata in the KEPs. So basically everything around the KEPs except for the technical part of actually implementing the KEPs. So there are some people who have been working enhancements on the release side. So they do make like good candidates to seed the subproject. But then do we want to do this as a subproject? Who will be interested in this other than those people? That is basically what I wanted to bring up here, and basically poll the group to see what they think.
So yeah, I have an opinion on that. I think that several of us here have already been looking at this, and that I'm all for this, and I'd be interested in contributing to it.
And we have the book club here already, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that would be like a natural set of people to, the meetings that you have for the book club, we can turn that into a regular meeting and get more people involved and start doing all the other things that are needed for KEPs.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
I think it is interesting to note that KEPs actually were originally in SIG architecture. So the move to SIG PM was in hopes that it would make it more administrative, but I think that we've seen in practice that KEPs are, for better or for worse, get into a lot of detail that actually does have relevance to the architectural roadmap. So I'm having lived through that, and also being one of the failed SIG PM chairs, I felt really guilty. You're like, they don't do anything. There's a bunch of lazy bums except for Steve. And I'm like sitting there like,
I didn't say that.
No, I know, but in my head, that's what I heard. The inner dialogue was like, So anyway, as a lazy bum chair of SIG PM, and also somebody who cares about SIG architecture, I think it makes sense. So.
Right. The one other angle that we were talking about this was like, this is not like a technical thing. This is more about process thing, and like it has close alignment with even Contribex. So for a moment we were thinking about like, can we get Contribex involved too here to keep things moving along, because there is lots of frustration that is involved in the KEP process, especially for people who are doing it for the first time.
Is that really true though? It seems like on KEPs we're blocked on tooling as much as anything, so I'm not sure that it's a non-technical project, right? Like maybe it's not implementing a distributed system, but I mean,
right,
still like tooling for KEPs is a technical problem.
I don't think we're blocked though. I think we're just suffering for lack of.
So for the tooling, we already have a POC for a website that looks like our release notes. But is that what we want is the question right now. So, but yeah, that's why in SIG release they do tooling as well, and even in Contribex they do tooling as well. So technical in the sense that they are the people who are manning this sub-project are not going to be actually implementing the KEPs. They are more like making sure that the KEPs are in good health and there is progress and people are making progress, and there are people to talk to when they have issues progressing a KEP, or suggestions on when to file a KEP, how to file a KEP, all those kinds of things as well, in addition to
I think some of those things you just said are things like that we had in goals for that kept reading group, but some of them I think are release team things, right? Actually moving them through the process, I wouldn't necessarily want this sub-project to be responsible for. I would more definition of the process, and I mean, I think we could do tooling around some of the process, some of the tooling. I mean, it is going to be split between that and probably release, SIG release.
Right, right. Also, there is traffic cop duties too, right? Like go talk to this SIG, make sure that you get sign off from that person, this person. Yeah. That is half the effort, and people who are new to the process don't know who to talk to or who to get guidance from, right? Okay, so there is interest. So can you please add your name there if you're interested in this? So I know who to ping when we get this going.
You can add me. I don't have the doc up right now.
Okay. Thanks, Jace.
I can redeem myself.
Yeah, I'm going to go pull the list of people who have worked the enhancement lead and the shadow for enhancements, and go poll them also. So let me come up with a list, start a thread somewhere, and pull you all into it. Okay.
Thanks, Dims.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dims. All right, so last item on the agenda here, back to Jordan.
So this was something that we've sort of talked about a few different times here, developing in multiple repositories, sort of breaking things down into smaller components that are better tested and better maintained, and then reassembling them. And so the K8s.io utils repo has accumulated a number of packages, most of which are fairly scoped. And that's been going on for the last couple of years. In the past release, a big chunk of storage mount utility code was moved there, which on the one hand was good because it let all of the CSI drivers make use of that without depending directly on the Kubernetes monolith. That's positive. But there were some things that we'd seen in the past few months around testing of that repository that were concerning. And so I wanted to raise that here just for awareness and to see if people had thoughts about how we can improve this. So what happened was the utilities that are in that repository, especially storage and networking, sometimes manipulate things that are not easy to unit test. They require particular environments or particular storage drivers or storage systems that just aren't available to run unit tests on in pre-submits. And so several changes went in that had some unit tests associated, but then hit edge cases that weren't thought of until they made it, got vended back into Kubernetes. And in some cases, there were even tagged beta versions of Kubernetes that could then be run in other environments like Windows nodes. And so what that meant was bugs got introduced that in some cases weren't discovered for months. So that was the first thing that happened. In trying to figure out how to react to those bugs, the easy answer, we would like the easy answer to be, oh, we'll just revert to a known good version. That's the easy answer. But because this repository has a lot of different utility packages for a lot of different things that are unrelated to each other, reverting to a known good version to fix the storage regression would have reintroduced bugs that were fixed in like networking utilities. And so we kind of have this shared fate where a lot of unrelated things are in one package, and we lack test coverage on some of those things.
I mean, in general, this is why util repos are not a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should be blocking changes to these packages until test coverage is up to par.
I would suggest kind of a two-step approach. One is splitting the mount library out into its own repo. And then once it's in its own repo, two things. One is add a bunch of, a lot more testing. We need end-to-end tests that actually exercise the code path with the mount library and Kubernetes end-to-end. Second thing I was thinking of, so split it off into its own repo, and then start doing releases. Right now, I think what we do is just floating head instead of having official releases cut for the utils lib, because there's so many different sub packages. It doesn't really make sense to do releases. If we split off into our own repo, we could actually have official releases that we do each cycle and have those picked up by Kubernetes and have something fixed to fall back on, that kind of thing.
Yep, Kubernetes utils is pretending we still have a monorepo, and we don't. And it, Jordan, I know you saw some PRs this last week or two where the dependencies were ridiculous, and we shot them down for those reasons too. I question whether the future of Kubernetes utils involves Kubernetes utils or involves 20 smaller repos that are more focused. Like, does it make sense to move to storage utils? Or, I mean, many of these libraries are like 25-line libraries. They really are utility. But if they take dependencies or need testing, like maybe they should be their own thing.
So what about multi-module repos? So you can have more than one Go mod. You don't want to
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's incredibly painful to manage.
We went through the thought exercises.
It'd be worth it is if you have organizational restrictions around having multiple repositories, and we just don't have that in Kubernetes.
Yeah. So
it's more reasonable to create.
So it makes sense to break it up. Yeah, like Tim was saying.
The what you said, Tim, about if something doesn't have the ability to be fully unit tested, like if unit tests aren't sufficient to exercise the component, then that might be a sign that it should not be lumped in with all of these other sort of like very simplistic helper utility function type things.
Likewise, if it has extreme dependencies, we should just say no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way that a utility repo can survive over time. Otherwise, we just inevitably will have to break it up.
So do we make a call here to say that the storage ones are sufficiently far along the line that it can be split out?
I mean, moving them out at this point would be a compatibility issue, so we'd have to figure out how to keep that in a compatible way, but how many are there?
What do you mean a compatibility issue? Because if we do it for a subsequent release, it's basically like changing a dependency, right?
We don't know that there's not somebody out there who's using Kubernetes utils and using your storage library. It seems unlikely, but if we yank it away from them, we've tried to keep a higher bar for Kubernetes utils.
Yeah, I think what we would probably do in that case is move it out so we can test it independently, version independently, and then document that package as deprecated and just say like this doesn't change.
So Saad, you said we're just using head, so maybe we need to do more formal releases of that, and then we can deprecate and move it out eventually.
I think the problem with doing formal releases is there's a lot of packages inside utils, so
right,
gets to decide that it's time for a release.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we need to do formal releases of utils. I think, like, if this is a particular problem, we're just picking on you, Saad, because you're here. You move your crap out to a new repo, version yourself, set up your own tests, and EOL the util version of what you had.
I think that sounds like a reasonable way forward.
Basically, you're being evicted.
Yeah, I
We
guess
are
my
perfectly
question is
okay with
now,
that.
If if it's all running head and if all the dependent drivers are pulling in head, and then when can we remove it? And if we haven't put a demarcation of a version and say, you know, post this version, it's going to be on, it becomes more challenging for them. But maybe it's just, that's life on the edge.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
The three options are to like put a notice there and then a long time in the future remove it, or you can sunset the package, like say document is deprecated, point to the place you extracted it to, and then freeze it and just say it never changes, and you just let it linger there and it's ugly but inert. And then the third option is to like have a utils v2, which
No.
that's the eye.
I mean,
But,
the other option would be leave it in place, but creatively break it so that if somebody updates it, they will get a notification that says, oh, I should go and take this other thing, which is in all ways equivalent, but I have to do some work.
it's better to just delete it if you're going to do that. So letting it compile and
No, not letting it compile. I mean, fail creatively at compile time.
Oh, well, okay. That's basically the same as deleting it. But so the immediate action items that I see are to add a clear policy about what things should be in utils. I think the two things you talked about, Tim, make sense. Minimal to no non-standard library dependencies, and must be fully testable with unit tests. I have a tool that, or the Go team has a tool called API diff, which you can run against a repo and it will like capture the Go signatures. I think for something like utils, where we actually want to maintain signature compatibility, we should set that up and run that so that we know if something is going to break.
Okay, I can take the action to go and augment the README under kutils, just to make that really clear.
And then specifically for the mount components, I'll let Tim maybe talk to the networking stuff, but specifically for the mount things, Saad, if you want to look into having a repo where we can, that is limited just to the mount library, that we could version and set up E2E tests. I know Ben Elder, who runs the Kind project, has a pre-submit on the Kind repo that will actually make sure that changes to it can work with Kubernetes master and different release branches. So he might be a good resource for figuring out how to do that kind of cross-repo CI.
Yeah, I think we do something similar for the CSI sidecar containers. It might be a little bit challenging considering this is a library, not a separate standalone component, but we'll look into it.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, I'll let you take a look at the networking or delegate some of the networking stuff. I don't actually know how many of the networking utilities can't be unit tested. It was more, I just saw sort of storage bugs and networking bugs getting interleaved and not being able to revert one because it would reproduce the other. So maybe this isn't as much of an issue for the networking utility.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a look. I've tried to hold the line on the networking stuff that this is a sort of a pure software library, not a system library.
Okay. That was all I had. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for today. Last chance to comment before we give back some time. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, sorry. Let me throw one thing out. Sorry. Just more of a notification than anything else. The infra working group is planning next week to flip the gcr.kates.gcr.io vanity name to point to a a community-owned GCR instead of a Google-owned GCR. This has been months and months in the making, the promoter and all the other stuff that people have done there. Big thanks to Linus in particular, but everybody else who's helped review and prep for this. The plan is to do it next week. Hopefully, nobody notices anything. There will be a temporary freeze on pushes into kates.gcr.io while we make sure that any back population is synchronized and that we're not racing against ourselves and causing chaos. We'll generate a full manifest of everything that's in the old repository, make sure that it is all in the new repository, and we'll flip the domain over. That domain flip takes a couple of days to roll through Google systems. And then after that, we will release the freeze, and hopefully nothing significant will have changed.
And with that, then the promoters, that you'll no longer need a Googler to push there, right? The promoters will do it automatically.
Hoorah!
Awesome. Okay, excellent. Thanks, Tim, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Thanks.